Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm the I'm the Are you ready to ride the Are you ready to ride the frequency? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Riding the Frequency. This time, I'm speaking to the most gentle, lovely human being. His name is Dan Willis. In 2001, Dan Willis was one of the Disclosure Project's top secret military witnesses that testified at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., in front of the mainstream media of the world. This world disclosure event was asking for a congressional hearing to expose illegal secret government operations, the extraterrestrial presence, and to release the advanced extraterrestrial derived technologies. The hearing was denied, and the mainstream media sanitized this disclosure to the public. In 2022, stemming from his prior research work of the science of crystals in the 1980s with IBM's senior scientist, Dr. Marcel Vogel, a connection was made for an incredible ongoing information exchange on the advanced science of crystals with an off-planet Pleiadean scientist via a quantum communications implant in his friend Elena Danaan. These exchanges have been ongoing, giving technology knowledge that can potentially be used on our planet for beneficial applications, as well as understanding insights into the nature of consciousness and the geometry of the holographic matrix of reality. Guys, get ready for a very informative talk with Mr. Dan Willis. Well, hi, Dan. Welcome to Riding the Frequency. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Full of pep and vinegar, as always. And I'm getting my fidget spinner so I don't interrupt you. Oh, and I better get the hair out of it because apparently when there's hair in a fidget spinner, it don't work so good. Let's see. All right, cool. We're ready to go. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, Dan, because I think talking about your background before we go into this presentation is important for my audience because I don't think they all watch Michael Sala and Cosmic Disclosure yet.
Oh, gosh. Let's see where to begin. Yeah, I was in the U.S. Navy with a top secret security clearance a long time ago, and was in naval communications and receiving secret reports of extraterrestrial craft coming out of the ocean. This is back in 1969. So I knew the subject was real, and so I've been researching, over the years, trying to figure out why the hell, spacecraft coming out of our oceans, why are obviously our government is fully aware of it. Why haven't the extraterrestrials made themselves known, and say, hey, here we are. Greetings, Earthlings. But that wasn't happening. So it left a big question mark. So I've been researching for many decades. In 2001, I was one of 21 top secret military witnesses that testified in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club on May 9th. And, we were disclosing the extraterrestrial presence and illegal secret government operations. And, over the years, I had experience of being chief engineer and broadcasting. I was an ABC newsman. And so I was looking at the National Press Club and it was like packed with reporters, largest event in the history of the National. Well, actually, Clinton with the blowjob with Monica was actually a little bit more. But anyway, with the
Got a joke for you later about
but it
that.
was the second largest event in the National Press Club. Um, we were disclosing bases on the other side of the moon. We had faster than light craft, 57 different species, presidents, CIA directors, heads of intelligence, all being denied access. So the place is packed with reporters, right? 22 cameras in the back row. I thought, my God, the stuff we're disclosing, and each of, we're breaking national security oaths, penalty of perjury, willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. I mean, I thought, how could this information not be world changing? But I got a quick education in 2001 about, what Operation Mockingbird was and how the media has been infiltrated and controlling the perceptions of the public. So, idly, a media company out of Hollywood contacted me to write an article for them about the control of media with the extraterrestrial issue. And I was very happy to dig into this because I wanted to find out the answer to myself. And, I've been researching authenticated documents and hundreds of witness testimonies. And after a while, a picture starts to form. Um, that's one aspect of my past. The other aspect was that in 1977, I had a interaction with an extraterrestrial being that initiated contact, and it was part of a science transfer program to our planet. The being was an emitter, as they work along with the Umites and the Seleucids in order to give our planet a little boost in scientific understanding. And it was a kind of an intense interaction. I had like a Kundalini opening, millions of volts going through my hands and feet. It's like they were trying to bring my level up to be able to even communicate with this being, right? And they projected a sphere in space and geometry formed in it. I didn't even know what platonic solids were and all this stuff, sacred geometry. And so I left a burning passion to try to understand, what the hell was this about, this experience. And so it every book I could grab on the subject, I grabbed, and it seemed that quartz crystals held a key to understanding the structure of the matrix and the interface of consciousness. And so at the time, IBM's head scientist, Dr. Marcel Vogel, is an incredible genius. He was IBM's head scientist. He invented the coding for magnetic hard drives, the phosphors on color television, liquid crystals displays like the one you're looking at. He had 140 patents. Um, he uh, he had to do a creativity course for some engineers. He heard about this plant experiment with Cleve Baxter, and so he thought this was total garbage, and he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. And he thought, no, I can give this as a see. All these engineers are left brain thinking, and he was sort of more of a right brain thinking type person. So he thought, well, this is a be a good experiment. So he hooked up a script chart recorder onto a plant. He burned a leaf, and the script chart went like that. And then the thought formed in his mind, to do it again. The moment the thought formed, the chart went like that. He said that squiggle changed his life. Anyway, to make a a very long story short.
Can we stop there for just a second? That means basically
Sure.
plant is psychic and read his mind because it knew it felt the intention and the thought and what he was about to do and went eat before he burnt it a second time.
All life forms are
Right?
entangled.
Well, yeah, of course, but we're not taught that in school. Like this definitely points to psionics being something that's natural to us and to any living thing. There's a densities, dimensions,
Yes.
frequencies, they're all there and they're functioning, and we haven't been taught that they're there. So I think we're like bulls in a china shop most of the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We're all
You're saying it's
entwined in
really
this.
important, like to just stop and you understand what Dan is saying right now. If a plant can hear or feel somebody's thought, we are all entangled, okay, in that thought, in that consciousness is the giant space of no thing and everything in which all thoughts exist. Like this is actually a thing, right?
Oh yeah, we're in a planetary matrix. One experiment he did was went all the way to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and he could psychically tune into the plant. And his colleague in San Jose, California, he could make this instantaneous. There's like the distance is not an object; it's quantum entangled.
Right.
And so,
Information is non-local, is basically what that means.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so
Sorry.
anyway, I he had this dream in a way to uh somebody gave him a crystal. He did a lecture and he had a colleague at IBM and he was doing this plant. He was studying pranayama yoga with his breath, and pulsing his breath and making this chart to go like that. And he somebody gave him a crystal and he thought, oh, this is woo-woo stuff, right? And so he lost the crystal and then she gave him another one. Anyway, he went to at IBM. His colleague had a back problem, and so he pulsed the breath with it, and he alleviated his colleague's back problem with it. And he said, "Oh my God, how can I make this a more effective tool?" And so he had this. He would work to exhaustion to try to find the answer to things, and he would get things in dreams, and he had this dream of how to cut the crystal into a dipyramidal form. And so this is an example. um, this one he cut as a gift for me. That was one of the first ones that he
Not
made
a
with,
four-sided one?
yeah, the four-sided is how he started out. um, and I wish I could share with him what I know now.
Hmm.
And they went into many more sides. You have like this is like an eight side is one of his favorite ones. But when you don't cut the crystal in respect to the natural lattice structure of the crystal, you're missing out on something, and something that off-planet cultures do, how they cut their crystals. And we'll go into that a little bit later. So anyway, long story short, um, so I drove all the way to the mines in Arkansas. I got a huge batch of crystals and brought them to him in San Jose, and he was cutting them for 24 medical doctors. He developed a technique of healing with the crystal, and so he was in his garage, cutting these. And so anyway, I worked with him, helped set up some stuff in the laboratory. Oh, good, good. Is that a Vogel Redion
Yeah, it's
cut?
from Becky. It's from Becky, and it looks a little,
Oh,
it
perfect.
looks less clear. It looks a little, it's got a little bit of a yellow color, golden color to it. My large
Yeah.
one is super clear. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I've got a
As
large and a
long
small.
as long as the vortex eye area is clear, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Becky
Yeah, I have.
Forsyth at Crystal Light and Sound and her husband do the most beautiful work, and they have these crystals
Oh,
cut like to the Marcel Vogel, well, more to the Genhan and Thorhan Iridian. We'll get into that later, but uh these are amazing things. So
they are. They are.
anyway,
And
Marcel, we're back.
oh yeah, back to Marcel. Yeah. Let's see.
The
Where does the story
notorious
go from here?
interrupter.
So I've been researching the subject, and it wasn't what the what I find out is that the Emether back in 1977 was preparing me with the science of the universe to prepare me in the future that I'd be given knowledge to be able to share with the people of our Earth. And so it was in the year 2022, in April, that my friend Elena Danaan, you can find out about her on elenadanaan.org. What happened was, due to MJ-12 agreements that sold out our planet to abduct millions of people back in 1954. She was abducted by the gray extraterrestrials, and they put an implant in her for tracking. They were planning on taking over our planet by creating a hybrid race. Anyway, all that failed. But what happened was, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials, busted in the abduction procedure, rescued her, and the implant is you couldn't remove it, because it would threaten her life, but they were able to modify it and retune it. Uh, See, they don't use electromagnetics like we do. They have these quantum implants that actually use quartz and mercury oxide to power it, that use as a quantum communication device. So her rescuer, Thor Hanaredian, has been in communication with her. And so in the show, she knew that I worked with Marcel Vogel on crystals, and she said that Thor Hanaredian, her contact, he's a high commander in the Galactic Federation of Worlds. His younger brother is going to a university in the Pleiades, learning how to terraform planets. They're what they call a star maker. And that I could ask him some questions, relaying, through her quantum implant. I would type up a question and he would answer it. So since April of 2022, there's like 200 and some pages, almost 3 years of question answer exchanges I've been doing with a Pleiadian scientist who has since graduated from the university. He's currently on Mars doing terraforming operations along with some Terran engineers, preparing for the Earth colonies to arrive in the next 2 years. And he's given me quite a bit of science. And they've authorized him to answer any question that I can ask. And I'm good with that, because I can ask a lot of questions. And so, yes, go ahead.
No, I was thinking so can I. And can I just ask really quickly, Jenhan and Thorhan, they're with the Galactic Federation. Um,
Right.
are they amethers? Are they where from?
They're Pleiadians from
They're
the
Pleiadian.
planet Erin.
Okay. Okay. So they're
The,
Pleiadian.
the Galactic Federation is made up of many different races
Right.
across the galaxy.
I just wanted
Uh,
to ask from what race or culture those two were from, because clearly there have to be how many billions and trillions of galaxies and stuff, and there are only Earthlings.
oh, yeah.
That's
Well,
nuts.
it's an awesome situation because it's kind of like a NATO in that there's like a actually Star Trek was actually intervention of the Galactic Federation with Office of Naval Intelligence is seeded into our public mind through science fiction. Some of these concepts of warp drive teleportation, the Prime Directive is actually a real thing, whereas non-interference clause, and so. what uh so anyway, in the process of asking a lot of questions, he I don't I don't know if I'm a starseed. I don't know what I am. I'm just a regular human being on planet Earth. But and I don't have any past life memories, but he has equipment that can, because we were having a conversation back and forth, and he said, "You don't want to know Atlantis now, do you? You know, you were there." And I said, "How do you know I was there? You have the ability to see my past life." And he said, "Yes, I do, Dan." That he could read that I was a scientist during the time of Atlantis in the capital city of Atla, and that I was attendant to one of the main crystal generators that they had there, and that one of my specialties was medical holographic science, which is interesting because I have a huge interest in the medbed type technologies. And that was part of a team that at the destruction of Atlantis that took technologies and hit them, on the planet in the future to be discovered. But you couldn't say any more than that. Um,
He's probably
which
referring
is,
to the stargates and stuff that Saddam Hussein knew about, and all of the pyramids that are underground that are like recharging stations, like all that stuff, which are completely active right now. Some of them, the ones that aren't broken, they're using. Pretty sure they.
I think lots of things are activating ever since 2021, 2022. During that time era, our solar system was liberated from the Greys and the reptilians of the Sakaar Empire. They were basically kicked out along with the Nakwaf and the Dark Fleet, the Nazis that, they achieved anti-gravity back in 1934. This is our history that we need to understand that was hidden from us. We had anti-gravity as of 1954, 20 years later in the US, but they went on to it was 1942 that they started colonizing on the moon and Mars and throughout our solar system. Way
You're
advanced. They had,
corroborating everything that Randy Kramer has said publicly.
oh, totally, totally. Um, and so, we've been kept in this Truman-like show of this agreed upon reality, right? While what we think is science fiction is actually the real thing that's going
Right.
on, yeah.
Science, what we call science today, is an absolute clown show because it's left out the quantum reality. So it's like one hand clapping and everybody that's a scientist going, "Can't you hear the noise?" Like, no, I can't. Can no, sorry. Like, and that's just me. People call me aggressive. Like, I don't know that I'm aggressive. I'm maybe just a little impatient because I feel like all this information is embedded in our DNA, and if people were to just get quiet long enough and tune into it, like the government can't not have a psychic population of Earth because then they can't get away with their crap. So they've got a vested interest in keeping us our pineal glands caked over and all this other stuff. It's like we have not been able to evolve as a species, and that is incredibly bothersome to me personally. Like I have a problem with that. Like I almost, you know, Chuck Buczynski has nothing on me. Like I'll go out and I mean, you want to murder
Yeah.
my body, go ahead. Like my consciousness isn't going anywhere. So,
Yeah, yeah, the Nazis started it, and RFK Jr. Stopped it out of our water system, the fluoride that is toxic and
right. And
calcifies our
JFK tried to tell everybody, and
pineal.
look what happened to him.
Yeah, yeah. So, in all these questions that I asked, there was one question that was forbidden by the Prime Directive that he couldn't answer, and Thorhan had to get special authorization. And they were able to answer it. I don't know if it was something out of a past life memory that came up that I asked this particular question about an interdimensional portal that is within the quartz crystal lattice structure when it's piezoelectrically stimulated. That once he gave permission it turns out that this is the primary enabling technology that they use to power their entire planet on the planet Era. They don't use electrical wires, like the primitive ways that we generate electrical power. They use what's called the frill. The
So
frill
kind of
is,
like Wi-Fi, basically. Invisible, you don't need a wire. It's invisible powering of everything through
yeah,
crystal.
but instead of being harmful, like electromagnetic radiation is biologically harmful, the frill
Crystal is not
actually, it, um, how to
healing.
say it,
Healing energies maybe to the frill. Keep you healthy.
it's
Kind
healing. Yeah,
right.
it takes out dissonance in the oscillations of our molecular structure.
Do they use frill technology for med beds?
There's a lot of different types of med beds, and I don't know, but it would seem I know that Jenhan has shared. We have he's given me I put together. I don't know everything, so I put together a science team of some brilliant minds that are working with me, and due to the technical information that's been received, we were able to put together a frill generator which is a interesting configuration that if a crystal is cut correctly and you put silver and copper torsion field coils around it that are perpendicular at 90 degrees and pulse them at 4096 hertz, which is the resonant frequency of quartz, it
4096, 4096.
yeah, 4096 hertz. What happens is it opens up a singularity vortex in the hologram, in which connects to what they call source. We have religious institutes we have called God and all this stuff, but they refer to it as source, of which we're all fractals of,
That's
and that from that the frill emanates, and then they have these pyramids. The pyramids act as a in the holographic matrix that we are in, which is geometric, it acts as a transponder in the matrix and converts this. And in the big cities, they have these pyramids on the planet Arrow that transpond the energy throughout the city, and it powers their stuff. Plus it's beneficial to all life forms, unlike electromagnetics. So eventually we're going to be going in that direction. And the technology they use is all consciousness assisted technology, where in the future, like they operate their spacecraft, which is their craft is alive and conscious, and their DNA interfaces with that. And so they control things. They don't have levers and knobs and switches and meters and everything, like when they discovered the crashes back in the 40s, they couldn't understand, there's no wires, there's no steering or anything. How does this thing operate? They didn't understand the understanding of the consciousness interface, of which, races that are thousands of years ahead of us have come to an understanding of.
There's somebody named Caroline Corey who has a movie called Superhuman, and in that movie, she she demonstrates how under a glass bowl, when
Uh-huh.
put a pin and
Uh-huh.
put aluminum over it,
Uh-huh.
and was able to spin it with her thoughts.
I've done that. I've done that back in the 80s. I used a glass mason jar,
Yeah.
and drilled a little hole and put a silk, yeah, and put a little twirling device, so there no wind you can't say, oh, the wind blew that, right? So it's in the jar, and I was able to link my mind with it, and basically you're rotating yourself, and I was able to make it rotate. And at the time, I was working at the Naval Electronic Systems Engineering Center in San Diego with a coworker this black fellow who we used to have these long philosophical conversations with, and he didn't believe I could do it. And so I invited him over to my house, and I wanted to show him that I could, you know, psionically rotate the device, and I couldn't. His belief was stronger that I couldn't do it than my belief that I could. And so a lot of times, other consciousness in the area will affect the experiment. Um,
Right. Conflicting
anyway,
consciousness probably cancels it out, like into a neutral.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, so yeah, there's a whole lot. You know, I've been invited to some conferences to share the technology that I've been learning, and I put together a slideshow. So if you want, I could bring up some slides and illustrate
Yeah,
some of that.
I would love that. I just really wanted to talk to you a little bit, like, and let
Yeah, yeah.
right,
Let's just
before we launch in, so
yeah,
people.
let's just organically dive into it.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Like, and I definitely want you to do your presentation because I think the more you get to do it, the more fluid it gets, and then and the more people get to hear you and watch it unfold. And if 100 people are watching and three people have an open enough mind to let it in and just at least contemplate these things, you can always go back to being a 3D monkey with a muddy potato if you want to. But personally, I for washing my potatoes, but hey, that's just me. Um, so you've been working with Elena for a really long time, have you not? How long have you known her?
Uh, since about April of 2022, when we started
Oh,
working
really? Okay,
together.
so it's pretty recent.
Yeah,
Pretty recent. Well,
yeah.
she's definitely an interesting one. At some point, if she's willing, I would love to speak with her, but when the time's right, I'm sure it'll happen. And if it's not right, it won't. And that's how I roll. So it's all good.
Yeah, well, her information is not channeled
No,
information, which is
but
subjective.
see, but this
Uh,
is it. People don't understand. There's a difference between remote viewing and being psychic. You use your psychic abilities to remote view, but remote viewing isn't psychic. It's different. Same with what you just said. She's not channeling. She's not channeling. Channelers are different from contactees. Like there are all these subcategories. It's not just woo. It's not just abductions and like abduction. All that stuff is closed contact. What Elena's having right now is pretty well closed contact, right? And
oh, yeah, she goes physically on board the craft on a regular. In fact, we just recently uh, Becky and Russell, Crystal Light and Sound, who'd been working with us from the beginning, having their crystals cut according to the exact specifications that Jen Hanaredian has given me. Um,
are they
and,
different
and
from
and the one
Marcel
that you
Vogel's?
have,
Are they
huh?
different? Are they different? Like, are they different numbers from Marcel's original cuts?
Yes, yeah. There's a difference.
So I feel like what
The,
I have is a Marcel Vogel crystal, not the new kind.
oh, is it the six-sided crystal?
It's a six-sided.
And you got it from Crystal Light and Sound?
About, yeah, after 2022. I got this one in, I think, 2023, and I got a large one in 2022.
Oh, okay. Then
And I
they were
know,
cutting it. The difference between a regular Vogel cut crystal, which can be anywhere from four sides, up to 24 sides, and it uses the radiance for healing, which is the number of sides affect the vortex spin. But the six-sided, when it's cut in alignment with the hexagonal core of the lattice structure, and the angles are around 52 degrees and 60 degrees on the end, is what we designate as being different from a regular Vogel as being a Vogel Iridian cut crystal. So you have a Vogel Iridian cut crystal because they started changing, having their cutters cut it according to, they didn't used to take that into account with the regular Vogel crystals, but these new attributes, it does everything a Vogel crystal does, but more, because it opens up a singularity vortex if you know how to use it.
where to hold it, where to put the pressure, how to pulse your breath through your nose.
Right.
I mean, this is good for women who have gone through Lamaze training. We already know this breathing techniques and how to breathe different ways. So I would think that anybody who's gone through Lamaze training, including partners, would have an easier time learning, at least from the breath part. Um, do you want to give me a quick lesson as to where one would hold, how to measure, where you said, I think in another interview that you've got a little piece of tape that you put on your.
Yeah, yeah. I have one. I like using the small. A small one is easier to hold sometimes, and I have a I have a larger one here, but the vortex opens equally from the small one to the large one. It doesn't matter the size. And so
The person
it,
using it more than the crystal itself.
what's that again?
The efficacy is probably less to do with the size of the crystal than the person who's doing the work with the crystal and how plugged in they're in to the whole thing.
If the crystal is formed correctly, then it creates two torsion fields. Maybe I should go over with some slides, and that will
That would
the
be great. Let me
visual.
make you a co-host so that you can do that. I th
Okay, because the visuals help. I like visuals, because it's one thing to try to explain it verbally, but the visuals help make it clearer.
Okay, you're a co-host now, so I feel like you can do whatever you like. You can take over the whole program. Like, are you a good gray or a bad gray? We can play Dorothy. No, you're a good gray. Please take over my system. You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Can you see that?
I can indeed.
Oh, okay. Let's see. This is just a slide presentation I put together, and so I'm gonna have to fast forward into the section that we're talking about here. Um,
Would you prefer to just do the slideshow as it is, and when we get to that point, we can stop?
okay, all right. I'll
That-
just go quickly over it. This was
no, no,
the
take your time. Please take your time. Don't, unless
it,
you have a time problem. I don't. So
This
you're,
was the emitter. What they did, they projected the sphere in space, and geometry went into infinity, and had to relate with consciousness, and how through love it bridges us from the lower densities into the higher densities, and all this was totally new to me. And Elena identified this being as emitter. She had in her book A Gift from the Stars, where her implant allowed her to actually see the database in the Galactic Federation and detailed 110 different extraterrestrial races, where planets they're on, and all their different characteristics. I mean, and things you can't make up. It's like she knew there were certain planets that NASA didn't even know 2 years earlier. They discovered later that it was totally accurate. Um, and so in our communications log, Jen had filled me in on what this experience was about. They said the Emeth are a part of a science transfer program to Terra, working with other cultures such as the Umaite and Selosi. And this Emether initiated this contact. It prepared me as a science transfer program allows to give me this knowledge that I'll be able to pass on in the future to the Terrans. So, in 1977, I didn't even know what platonic solids were, so it was all new to me. And so it led me to ask, what's the geometrical nature of the matrix of reality and interface with consciousness and quartz crystals? So this is Dr. Marcel Vogel. He spent 17 years researching quartz crystal. He set up a full-on laboratory, electron microscope, spectrophotometers. He's a full-on scientist dealing in the area of woo-woo, so is quantifying it. And this the dream he had of the dipyramidal form. Here in his garage, here he's the crystals I delivered to him. He's cutting them in this form.
from that big
Uh,
bad bunch that you went and collected. You said that's what I interrupted you there, where you said I went and I got a big bunch of crystals and I sent them off.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the batch. Yep. And
fabulous.
so he started with four sides, like the one I showed you. And then, six, eight, six, it kept on thinking the vortex spin, but he didn't know something that I learned decades later that he would have loved to have known. I don't know. Is there, uh, oh, that was me in a 1984 TV show. I was actually talking about med beds 40 years before we even knew about med beds. Um,
I'm
so
sure
a
that
long
went
time
down
ago.
well.
I forgot to enable sound, so you probably didn't hear anything,
Oh,
did
can
you,
you
the
go
video?
ahead, take your time, go back and enable your sound. I'm telling you, this
Uh,
is very loose.
oh,
Like this,
I was
I do
talking
it
about
live.
in the future we'll be able to go into a chamber and using energy we'd be able to uh, you know, heal, different situations and about working with Marcel in the laboratory. Um, so
And
re
do you want to enable
research,
sound so that we've got that? Take your time to do that. Like it's not an issue. Like
yeah. This thing sometimes crashes. Oh, let's see if I can. Uh,
that's okay. I mean, as long as everybody heard you say that, we know what happened if there's technical trouble. I'd rather have the information go out properly
okay.
than
Let's
I
see. I'm
it's
gonna
okay.
stop share, and I'm going to try this again. Let's see. I can go
My friend Neil is an expert at all this stuff, that portal to ascension.
there.
He knows how to do all this stuff. I'm leaving it to you because you've done presentations before. I'm very manual and I learn quickly, but I don't want to start pushing buttons. I'd mess things up. I don't know what I'm doing with
Oh,
presentations.
let's see. I'll try this again here.
Okay, you guys, this is so
From
cool.
current slide. Now let's see. I'm going to go into share. I know there's an option here that, there it is. You have to click share sound or else there won't be any sound.
Good.
Um,
You're helping me with my learning curve while I watch you go through it.
okay. Yeah, I did this show in Australia and no sound came out. So we'll try this again. Okay, you seeing Marcel there? Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
okay.
You
All right.
might visualize, Alex, and say in the future, a person could walk into a chamber and they could have like these energy transducers. A person could see if there's a distortion in a person's energy field, and then they could use appropriate intervention, energetic means to restore the person's health and balance back using purely energy and vibration. This is science fiction, topic, but we're turning magic into scientific fact as we're discovering things in the laboratory.
I noticed that this one is rather, is most of them are six-sided and rather lopsided as we see in those there. Now this one's been specially cut.
It's been specially cut.
When he says
Yeah.
lopsided, does he
Yeah,
mean
it's
the
been
female
specially
and
cut.
male? Lopsided. Why did he call it
Well,
lopsided?
what he
The
means
bottom is
is
fatter than the top? Is that what it
with
is?
with a regular crystal when it grows, they're like he calls it lopsided,
Okay,
but
okay.
they grow irregular. But when you cut, the lattice structure is perfect. So when a lapidurus cuts the crystal, you do it in alignment with the crystal. So I'm going to go here to the rest of the show here. Let's see, share button. Okay,
Thank you so much,
there,
Dan.
there we go. Okay, so I shared these methods with Jenhan that Marcel trained me on, and he says these methods I've just read are effective. I wish I've known such a great mind and vibrant being as Marcel. His legacy must pursue and be used to assist the people of Terra in their evolution of consciousness. The method described that your friend Marcel came up with is very good, But little did he know that his own consciousness was bridging the frequency of the altered bodies to source. And that's something Marcel didn't know, but we now
That's
know.
almost like he's saying that Marcel was using consciousness assisted technology without knowing that that's what he was doing.
Yeah, because the crystal can bridge to source, and with the impulse order, intentions of consciousness, it because the quartz crystal is physically manifest on all dimensions and all densities at the same time. So they're a natural bridge between all densities and dimensions. So it acts as a bridge.
Well, if everything is right now, then quartz crystal, I feel like is oh God, I don't know. I don't have the right vocabulary. I know what I'm thinking, but I don't know how to
Hmm.
say it.
Yeah, well,
I think you know exactly what I was talking about, and no one would be able to hear us. Oh well.
we'll go a little further and see if let's see, where am I going? Oh, there. Okay. Sure. Okay. So we're researching ancient quartz artifacts, like the Mitchell Hedges skull, that Marcel went into the skull and asked, "What's the purpose of this? Why do they use this?" And so we saw a temple with a hole in the middle, and when the sun came overhead, it would illuminate the skull. A high priest would be able to transfer the consciousness of an older adept by pulsing his breath, transferring it into the quartz sphere because quartz embeds consciousness. And so when it was transferred, he would then reverse his hands, left, receive, right, send, right. It drew it out of the skull and into the mind of a young girl. And so that knowledge that was transferred from the older adept was now in the mind of the young person. And that's how he saw it was used as an information transfer device. And then there was another. I knew Dr. Ray Brown, who was he's treasure diving in off the waters of Bahamas, and a storm shifted the sands, and he discovered an underwater pyramid, and he swam in. And my brother stayed with him 2 weeks, and he wrote detailed notes of what the room looked like inside this pyramid. And Elena Danaan has much better graphic skills than I do, and she recreated it beautifully. This is a photograph I took of the sphere. You can see there's like this interesting grid work inside. The room had 7 chairs surrounding a quartz sphere about the size of a tennis ball, uh, being held in hands with a golden rod coming down from the ceiling, and this red mercury oxide crystal is what Elena believed was opened up a hologram, and there was a falcon on the wall holding the sun in its talons and 7 beings on each side. And she believed this was a meeting room for Inky's elite scientists of the Akbakalu. And Jenhan said that this was a communicator to home. This is Altian technology, which is highly advanced. Altians are much more advanced than the Pleiadians. And this was a project I worked on. We imported this from England. It came out of the 1950s. This is consciousness assisted technology. It's a radionic type device that is a holographic camera that it was patented in Paris in 1955. Thousands of photos were made with it. And I was working on this device that had radionic dials, it had sound oscillators, and you take a drop of blood. For example, this woman who was pregnant, you can tune into the fetus is like 50 miles away because the blood holds a holographic whole of the entire, because the universe is holographic. And so you take any part of somebody and it contains the whole of that person, not only the whole of the person in the moment, but through time as well. And so we had a time spiral. We can move forwards and backwards into time and the energy would create a projection, a 3D projection hologram in space, which was reflected back onto this photographic plate, which would capture a slice, a 2D slice of this projection. And here you can see tuning through this time spiral. Um, the woman that was like 50 miles away that was pregnant. Here's that 1 month, 2 months, 3 and 6 months progression moving through time. And so, uh, and here is a homeopathic pill where you could see the actual Bach flower remedy flower within that pill. And here's a seed of a lily flower. From the seed, you could see its future bulb and flowering cycles moving through time. So everything in our holographic universe has this time vector, which is tunable. Um, and this is primitive, compared to the extraterrestrial technology that can tune through time. But it substantiated the fact that indeed the holographic field is tunable through time. My dear friend Alex Collier described the Andromedans call it they actually call it a camera that takes a holographic picture of you, and in that picture, through time, you can tune through when, let's say, you were the most optimal, all your body parts, and they overlay it on you. And since the universe tends to perfection, it would pick the most resonant pattern, and you morph into that using this medbed type technology, which Jenhan described. He said that some medbeds use fractal holographic technology. Let me explain. The fractal core formula of the tissue to repair is recorded, and then the perfect unaltered geometrical pattern is reconstructed and superimposed on the damaged pattern. The old pattern instinctively pairs and morphs into the new one because the universe tends to perfection. That's an important point. It's a holographic fractal repairing. He said sound frequency is used to tie in the new pattern with the old one. You remember how I explained earlier how holographic structures are constructed or altered by frequency. Um, and this is so cool. I love this. Elena physically went on board the Metaton ship where she saw it was a time-looking device where she saw our planet 20 years in the future. And High Commander Haben on board the Metaton ship said to her, all these technologies that you saw existing 20 years from now are being produced now in this precise moment. Everything is real. Everything exists already. It's ready for when the people of Terra are ready. And the new leader will come. Yay. And the dark will vanish because the light will rise. All the real leaders will rise all over the planet Earth, as you call it. And it is now, very soon, the time when you stand up and take the hand we held to you. You finally take it, and we are a family. So this was back in December of 2022. And then a few months later, in March of 2023, Elena was physically, this is not channeled projection or anything like that, she was taken on a Pleiadean scout ship to the moon, where she was able to see inside of a moon base these massive factories that were producing these thousands of medbeds that will be completely replacing our corrupt medical system and the pharmaceutical corporations that use these new modalities that will be a welcome change. Uh, I've been researching witnesses for a long time. I told you about that article I wrote after I went to Washington to testify. And then all of a sudden in the year 2000, you have all these people having total memory recall, going into space, and what happens is they they put
Can
them
I
on a
stop you
different
for a question?
timeline.
Are you talking about secret space program people who have done 20 and back?
Yeah, yeah. What with the technology, the time reverse technology, they serve 20 years and then they time reverse their age regress and time regress, their body back to when they were like 17 or whenever they were enlisted. And so now they're back in the 17-year-old body and back in about within a few minutes from when they signed the contract, and the memory's wiped. And then they go along 20 years in this timeline. It's interesting that the U.S. Navy Solar War and Secret Space Program launched back in the 1980s. And so what's 20 years from 1980? The year 2000. That's when they all started coming out. People started having total memory recall, such as Michael Ralph. And, I studied all these different whistleblowers that came out and tried to patch what is corroborating. Whenever you have a lot of truth coming out, there's always what you call counter disclosure assets. The people
Well, then
come in that
I
make
saw
up.
Randy Kramer on there and I saw Andrew Basiago. Those were the two people that jumped out at me immediately.
Yeah, Andy. I knew Andy before Andy Bisagio here.
That's
I
2008 guy. Yeah.
I knew Andy before he went public, and I highly encouraged him for his safety to get notice it, get on coast to coast and things like that, and he did, and so he got really really visible, after that, and
2018 looks like Jason Rice. Is that right?
yeah, and Jason Rice, he was part of deals with the Nachtwaffen, the Germans, and the Sakaar reptilians. He got kind of sucked into a kind of nefarious program. Yeah, they all have interesting stories. Like my good friend Tony Rodriguez, the poor guy, he got into a satanic sex trafficking operation. He pissed off this kid that was a high Illuminati member, and so he got involuntarily put onto he was a cargo engineer in the Dark Fleet, and he had a lot of horrific experience. He experienced being on the med beds where he had an insectoid attack on Mars where they, you know, chopped his arm off and his foot, and they reintegrated him whole again,
Right.
like
We
like
always
John
joke around
Charles.
about we can't grow pieces back like lizards, but with this technology you can. I've heard the same stories, not about having med beds, but the wars, fighting, recon, 2000 Basiago talks about it, Kramer talks about it. I think
Right.
these other Tony, I mean, Series Colony Cavalier. That's the first book. He's got another two.
Oh, such a
I
great, highly recommend it.
highly encourage you guys to go grab a copy if this is of interest to you. I'm not sure it's
Oh,
not of
yeah.
interest to everybody, but okay.
Yeah, it's an
Impressive.
incredible account of his incredible experience. Anyway, yeah, there's all this stuff going on in outer space. People have no idea about what's going on. So
Right.
anyway,
I think you're crazy if you say something about it still. Like that's got to stop, man. Because how do we move forward in a post-disclosure era if all of this doesn't come out and people cannot wrap their minds around it?
well, doing shows like we're doing right now, help
Again,
seeding, people are going to say, oh, totally delusional. He must have hit his head, coming up with stuff. Too much, watch too many science fiction movies, right?
well, maybe they haven't watched
Um,
enough science fiction movies. That's my answer. Ah,
So, how do you hide the truth? You muddy the waters, right? With counter disclosure, people coming out and they'll say things, discrediting things like, oh, the Earth is flat and I've been on Mars and I've done this and the secret space program and I'm 20 and back and I'm the king of planet cuckoo or whatever. So you have these people come out to try to discredit, the people who are the real people, right? And so that's how they do it.
tell
And I
me
won't
about
name
this
names.
planet cuckoo. It sounds so familiar.
Planet Cuckoo, yeah.
It sounds so familiar. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So anyway, I was
Voilà, voilà.
researching, my friend Elena Danaan. She's graciously accept it being like a bridge between the Galactic Federation worlds and our planet by relaying these messages, from the Galactic Federation. Every Monday she does a Star Nation news that gives an update of what's going on in our galaxy and our solar system. So I did in-depth research on her, and I have found 26 different data points that would be very difficult to make up, that she would say something and then it gets corroborated afterward. And so her credibility, to me, is off the charts. A lot of people have a hard time comprehending the information but I've things like, for example, uh, in her book Gift from the Stars, she identified three planets in Proxima Centauri 3 years before the telescopes were powerful enough to see the three planets in Proxima Centauri. And then Thorhan says, watch for activity in Neptune. Watch. Everybody's going to be talking about Neptune. And so what happens is the Intergalactic Confederation, also known as the Cedars, came into our solar system in 2021, and then all the planets started heating up. And so because there's these space arcs that are all over in our solar system, and there's one in Neptune, and it started heating up. And so it was all in the news like a week later. And this
We're
one,
having global warming issues, and from Elena's perspective, uh, all the arcs are warming up here too. How do you think that's correlated?
it seems as though the
That sounds wacky, but
frequency.
like, not really. If there are arcs planted all over the earth and they're warming up, why wouldn't everything warm up with it?
Exactly, exactly. I think we're going into a section of the galaxy that is a
Goldilocks.
higher energy level. And so the frequency are increasing, and
That's what they call it, the Goldilocks zone, where it's almost like we went into the bubbles of some champagne from being in some flat water.
yeah. And this last one, what she does is like when she gets information, she immediately emails Dr. Michael Salla, so it like timestamps it, and there's like evidence. And she's talking to Thorhan on Mars when he was doing some terraforming operations, and Thorhan says, "We just had a huge quake, while we're working there." And she emailed Dr. Michael Salla. A week later, NASA records the largest quake ever recorded in our solar system on Mars. Stuff, you just
Yeah, that's not a happy
can't make
accident.
up.
It's not a happy accident. Like, and people, because look, you can't just walk into a Starbucks with Dan and have an out loud conversation about, yeah, and Thorhan Iridian told me, and then I was on the ship, and then
Yeah.
Leanne's music sounds like what they play on the ship. She said that to Michael, by the way. I sent her one of the songs that was just really not like what I usually write, which is a separate conversation. We can have it later. But you can't just walk around talking about this stuff without people staring at. Look, I can't even look at a stranger and smile without them looking at me weird. I'm just like,
Yeah, we're transitioning. Our planet's been hijacked.
yeah.
Psychological. We've been on a psychological war for many decades.
Well, and the more religious people call it a temporal war, I think, because good, bad, archangels, fallen angels.
Well,
There's so
we're
many, this is the vocabulary problem again. So many different words to describe the same thing, which then lead people to think, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, when we're all really actually agreeing with each other, but arguing. That's another crazy habit Earthlings seem to have.
we'll get all our semantics aligned at some
Get
point.
your
Anyway.
semantics in a row, lady.
So she invited me on the show, and you know, uh, they're good-looking people. Thor Han, his younger brother Jen Han, as I said, he was going at the University of the Pleiades. I could ask him questions, and so April 2022, first exchanges began, and then. This is an illustration by Elena of Atlantis that, I was apparently I have this somewhere in a past life memory, but it's I'm working on trying to remember. some of these things I once knew of Atlantis. Um, and so we've learned a couple of things. It's kind of extensive, so I'll kind of hit the highlights. Quartz crystals. What is it about the quartz crystals? Why is it special from anything else, right? From amethyst, citrine, diamonds, rubies, emeralds. Why quartz crystals? The core holographic structure of quartz is the purest material in the universe. It's based on the same. See, everything in the universe is based on these core fractal formulas. Uh, water and quartz are both interdimensional bridges. Crystals can store data just as water does because it's constructed on the same core fractal formula, but crystals have way more capacities. Of course, they're the most elaborate state of matter, so elaborate that it naturally embeds consciousness. In these spacecraft that are alive, the plasmatic consciousness can actually embed within a crystal that is put into the spacecraft, or the space ark, as they call it, and operates the craft because the consciousness can embed itself within the crystal. A crystal is a bridge because it exists in all dimensions at a time. It's physically manifested. On board the Altean ships, they're all with crystals throughout the thing because it's manifested in all dimensions and all densities at the same time. And that our entire universe is made up of these little tetrahedrons. The tetrahedral fractal geometry is the secret of the universe. As you see in the Flower of Life, you see, Nassim Haramein, who I met with back in 2001. I shared with him my experience. He says, "That's it. That's the structure of the universe." What I
I
shared with
love
him.
that guy. I love that guy. And in a flower of life, I mean, if you expand it out to like lots and lots and lots, all the shapes are in there. All of the sacred geometry, the pentagon, all of that stuff is in there. As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but I don't think
Yeah,
so.
he was one of the scientists I met with in 2001 in a home in San Francisco. That a whole bunch of scientists that had horror stories about how the SWAT teams would come in, and one person had a crystal uh, that was producing power, and the SWAT team came in and cleaned out his laboratory, and so anyway, I was sharing with Nassim was sharing this energy device that used geometry, and so it I felt inspired to share with him my experience with Amethyr, and he said, "Yeah, that I didn't even know anything about him." He said, "That's it. That's the structure of the universe." So, and it turns out, all the elements in the periodic table of elements are basically tetrahedral fractal configurations that make up, you know, hydrogen, gold, silver, platinum, all the different elements are basically different arrangements. And I asked him about the on board the mothership that's in our solar system. They have XL6 called the Excelsior, where they have these food replicators where they can create anything. The replicators, they can create out of the ethers, technology. Thought is geometric. When we think, it projects thoughts that are geometric patterns. Are you still with me?
Yeah,
No?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. You turned into a
I turned into
into a
I
giant
was
orb.
oh God, that no, but this is what I see. This is some of my work.
Oh,
Like
that's beautiful. Yeah.
so I'm kind of obsessed with geometry and making it, and when I meditate sometimes I've been shown golden geometry that changes against a black background. Um
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, so I know what you're talking about. Sadly, I don't remember being contacted by anybody. I wish, you know, maybe one day, maybe I need to get rid of more of my programming before that happens. I don't know. We'll see. In any event, continue.
As we think, we project these geometrical thoughts, the geometry, and breath. and we pulse our breath. It's precise surgical breaths, or it gets lost in the ether. But and Marcel discovered this when he was doing the plant experiments. That here you can see the script chart recorder going, woo, when he pulsed his breath. Love, it's a connecting pulse between all living beings. When you intend love with a crystal, it activates its transcending capacity because love prevents dissonance. Because as Jenhan says, quote, dissonance cannot attune with an ordered state of geometrical resonance, which is illustrated in the Dr. Emoto's water crystallization, gratitude, compassion, love, you have formations, but, you have like bad, nasty thoughts. They don't take form. They're all based
But they
on
do take
same.
form. I watched my mom when she was in her throes of Parkinson's, and when she was thinking not happy thoughts, which tended to be her habit in later life, she was creating all kinds of thought forms. And then she'd start talking to them, and I'd have to go in there and like get into it with them and tell them to go away and tell her to stop feeling things like that and thinking things like that because she's creating her own weird characters. I tried to explain. She
I
understood,
know.
right? She did understand.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Anyway, everything's based,
Right.
quartz crystals, water, love, they all interface because they're based on these formulas that are universal. And Marcel pointed this out that, in water you have all the different geometries in nature are formed. And in order to understand how this all works, you have to understand the structure of the holographic matrix. And that the flower of life, although it's this like real super simple pattern that anybody can make with a compass, right? It seems like very simple. It actually has complex geometry embedded within it, and that it represents the multiverse, and that there's an infinite number of these spherical bubbles that go into infinity, that each with varying densities, that in our particular bubble that we're in, our dimensional bubble that's filled with ether, um, it projects itself in 12 densities where the highest is source, which you could say at 13th level, you could say, and it goes into the lower densities. The lower do not affect the higher affect the lower densities. Jenhan, in their culture, they call it Imana, projecting itself into the lower realms. And so this is in our, there's different densities and different spheres that emanate from source. And I love this from Thorhan. He says that there is no concept such as gods in this creation, because the creations of Source do not worship each other, and also because the creations of Source do not worship Source, because they're a fractal of it. They are the same essence. Worship is a product of unawareness and controlled ignorance, thanks to our religious institutions. We have, you know,
Yeah, well, if Jesus was an alien, if God is an alien and it's know thyself, I think they're talking about like deprogram and listen to what he's saying, It's like you can't, there is no leader. You're a fractal of the leader. You are the leader. It's all the same thing. And like same thing with time. Everything is right now. They understand that. We don't. We've got it all dragged out in a line for purposes of something. It's so weird. It's all so weird.
Oh, yeah, the message of Jesus, Yeshua, it was all spot on, It's like,
But then they had
greater
to pervert
things
it.
than I can do,
Told
you
everyone.
can do, and kingdom of heaven is within you, and
Right.
all this was I can't see any fallacy except, the trouble is they edited out the Holy Scriptures so many times, removed so much stuff
Man.
because they wanted to disempower the public rather than empower
You
them.
can't control them if they're empowered. It's one or the other.
We're going to get to the point where we realize that, God's not this guy with a long beard sitting on a throne and, all this stuff, that they, we're we're moving out of a primitive state that we don't understand that a lot of things that happened in the Bible were actually extraterrestrial interactions that happened a long time ago.
Eric von Daniken is a gift because he's been going on about that forever.
He is.
I wish he would translate the Bible into 2025 speak. Because again, we're talking about vocabulary that's been eliminated and or perverted to weaponize people into a mass control system. It's
Well, there's always dysfunctional humans that want to control. Um, anyway, this I wrote this up. This is some basics about source. Source tends toward growth and evolution and stands at the highest point of evolution, near perfection. The universe tends toward this perfection, as we talked about earlier in the med beds, because things will move in that direction. The higher a being's consciousness goes in density, the more that being resonates more with its perfection and with love. That's why the higher density beings, they look good, and they're a lot more loving. Source is constantly creating, radiating outward fractals of consciousness through the spectrum of densities from higher to lower densities, using the morphogenic keys of the holographic tetrahedral fractal geometry lattice matrix of creation. In other words, there's this formula that is the geometry of how it comes into physical manifestation from the level of source into physical reality. Source is dual in nature and creative. Since each of us are fractals of the source, we're also dual in nature. We have our two natures. Um, and uh, we're able to create and change reality, because we have this ability. As conscious beings in this dimension, we evolve through love, as love is the binding medium between all living things and bridges us from the lower densities into the higher densities closer to source. Love transcends the densities as love prevents dissonance, as the matrix is in an ordered state of geometrical resonance, of which dissonance cannot attune to. The quartz crystal is in synchronized frequency with source and exists in all densities and dimensions at a time. It's a fundamental structure of the universe, so that when you stimulate the central vortex singularity of the crystal, like that little crystal you have, it connects to the void and bridges to source, where a conscious thought pattern can be crystallized forever, as a void is outside of linear time. And so the void, now, it took me a while to get my head around this because I saw the geometry of the flower of life and it's like this perfect geometry and mathematics, but it's not like that. Just like in nature, everything's approximates, golden mean ratios and things like that. Elena was on board the Nibiru, which is parked outside of Jupiter right now, um, with Prince Ea, who showed her what source looks like. And it's actually these wobbly bubbles, and each one of these bubbles is like the bubbles are all filled with the ether, and they're
they're
in what's
in
called.
perpetual motion, right? They're perpetually moving, aren't they? They're not.
Yes, yes. They're wobbling, perpetually moving, and they're different sizes, different dimensions. They overlap. It's a mess. It's all over the place.
But it's a
No,
beautiful
no, I don't
mess.
mean to say it's a mess. It's
No,
all
it's a
perfect.
beautiful, beautiful mess. Like
Yeah, it's a beautiful mess. But yeah, I'm just being silly.
I know.
But it's all in what's called the void. The void is the void of everything. There's no time or space in the void. So whatever happens in the void, it connects to all densities, all dimensions. Anything that happens in the void affects everything. So, um, existing between and outside the infinite dimensional spheres of the multiverse of different densities and nonlinear space and time exists this void. And so the void is basically in which the whole framework of creation exists within. Um, and so when you open up the singularity vortex within the crystal, um, it the singularity connects through the void and connects to the level of source. And so when you imprint a pattern, normally when you think thoughts and things, they wither in time, right? The energy of it. But when you imprint it at the level of source through the void, since there is no time in the void, it lasts forever, for eternity. And so by doing so, it allows it to come into physical manifestation. Now, these are important principles I need to go over in order to understand what I'm about to share with you in the crystal science. As Una says, the, the Alteans are part of the group of scientists in the Intergalactic Confederation. They're 20,000 years more advanced than the Pleiadians, that are 300 years more advanced than we are. And she says, one day you'll remember that the highest technology in the universe is consciousness. And what Una says about the quartz crystal, about how it transpons the lattice of time, it says, quote, quartz is a transponder by nature. It connects to the points on the grid of space. It vibrates not only in the lattice of space, but also the lattice of time. Your science will soon discover this. Quartz is the highest state of solid matter before the state of light. That is why quartz can heal tissue. She says, it doesn't reorganize matter on a molecular level, but repairs it by transponding the injured organic tissue with the vibratory key of a previous state before the alteration was made. It reorganizes dissonance with a resonant template. In other words, if you damaged your arm severely, in time is the state before the damage happened. And so that state is oscillating in the lattice of time. And so the vibratory
grab
key.
it and then overlay it and then fix your arm.
Right, exactly.
That makes sense in my head. Like it's very linear. I don't know where or why there's so much pushback because of the source, no pun intended, from which it's coming. Like, look, if anybody who's watching this watches my lives, I've been doing them now for 19 weeks. I don't think there's 1 week that goes by where I don't go off about consciousness. Consciousness is the commodity, it's the currency, it's the everything. Consciousness and source, it's the same thing. And we're fractals of source. So we are source. So what is the problem? Like I get
Right.
I get whooped
Simple,
up.
isn't it?
I get aggressive and
Okay, so
sorry.
we were having this conversation initially,
Right.
with
So we're here. We're at the point in time of your presentation where it's time to take my crystal out. And anybody else who's got a Vogel crystal, we'll take a couple seconds. Go get your crystal right now. Right now. Get your crystal now. Yeah, so I have this one. I have a large one. I didn't get a medium one. I made the sad mistake. Here's a cautionary tale for everybody. Don't sleep with your crystal under your pillow. Because if you stretch and put your arm under your pillow and knock it off, it'll fall behind your bed. And
they
then
break easy, the tips. Yes.
and I've got a nice little fracture in my large one. And I don't think I had a long talk with Becky about it, and she was going to have me send it to a guy who does her cutting.
Yeah, they redo the termination.
Right. But it might cost a lot of money to do that. So I just left it, and it was less expensive to get a small crystal while I just figure out what I want to do with
Oh, the small one works great,
Exactly.
and it's, I have no financial interest in it, but around $190, I think 189 or something
186,
for the
189, something like that. I think they may have gone
yeah,
up to be like 130 something for the little
yeah,
one.
for a Vogel Radion cut crystal. Yeah, not the Vogel, but the Red. It depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to use this Pleiadian science, then you need that. But anyway, this is how the conversation went initially about Jen Hen was saying that crystals have their own fractal geometry. If they're in a natural original shape, they have it naturally. As they grow in nature, every angle is 52 degrees or 51.843 to be exact. And
But who's counting?
if they're in their natural original shape, they have it active natural because the crystal naturally forms in that. If they're cut roughly, they lose it. But if cut following the lattice structure, they keep it and can even be enhanced considerably that way. Thorhan tells me that you know about what type crystals that correspond to what I say. And Elena chimes in and says, the Vogel cut crystals? And Thorhan responds, yes. And I ask, are the Vogel cut crystals significantly more powerful than a natural single quartz point for doing this work? And Janhan responds, oh, yes, they are. If it is cut rightly, in perfect alignment with the grid of the lattice, natural raw quartz, of course, effective. As they've been used all over the planet, different cultures have used quartz crystals. But the Vogel cut, as you named them, are a more surgical tool to operate in the fabric of space-time and universal consciousness. So this is how they cut the crystals on the planet Era. This is what differentiates a Vogel crystal from a Vogel-Iridian cut crystal, is that the lattice structure must be cut laterally and vertically in perfect alignment with the hexagonal core, and that 60 degrees and 51.843 is the most accurate. Of course, if it can be 52 degrees, it still works with a small crystal. And so this is what, so we designated this as a Vogel-Iridian cut crystal to differentiate. And why this 51.843 angle? He says this is a ratio that acts as a transponder. It's dynamic geometry. Some shapes, just because of their proportions, naturally affect the holographic structure of the matrix. He says we use this specific pyramidal ratio to build our frill generators, as I mentioned earlier, how they power their cities, because the geometrical structure of the central crystal in a generator will interface with the pyramidal ratio of the building machine harvesting its energy. The most accurate is 51.843. Anyway, and why the 60-degree angle? It's because the sender angle must be in resonance with the geometry of the holographic matrix that's the receiver. Remember, we mentioned that the whole structure of the matrix is based on these little tetrahedrons. And so when you look at the tetrahedron, every angle on a tetrahedron is 60 degrees. So it's through form resonance that it resonates with the matrix. Interestingly, Egyptian obelisks set their pyramidions at 60 degrees. Modifying
Patra's needle in Central Park. We've got a needle here in Central Park, and I wonder if it's at the 60 degree.
Oh yeah, Tony Rodriguez has totally got into that one, and he's doing some interesting research with Egyptian obelisks and affecting the water. That's a whole nother subject. Modifying the matrix of reality. Janhan said to me, it's interesting, these things that I supposedly know. Anyway, I was told the mission you have chosen consists in teaching the Terrans how they can change their reality. You all knew this. Teach them how to activate the vortex and how to modify the holographic matrix. And so I guess that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And so, like I mentioned earlier, they can answer any question except for this one question that I asked. The following information was previously forbidden by the Prime Directive to be shared. Thorhan Iridian was able to obtain special authorization from the Galactic Federation. It was based on a question I asked regarding an interdimensional portal that was between the charge triads of the crystal lattice structure. And so Janhan answered, it has to do with the phase conjugation node for the vortex singularity of the crystal. He says, quote, it works by finding the phase conjugation node inside the crystal by projecting inwards the geometrical shapes of the two opposite points, like a mirror, kind of like a laser. You have these two mirrors, energy going back and forth. There is a vortex singularity of the crystal. Focus your thought and energies just there, and you may project your consciousness to anywhere you wish in this universe and to other universes, other densities, other dimensions. Anything is accessible in space, dimension, and time. This is great power, Elena. Elena's relaying this. It is very important information. I'm honored to be allowed to share this with you because this is the technology that they power their spaceships with, they power their planet with. It's very fundamental technology that they use with these crystals.
Seems like
So now,
communication is very formal. They're very well mannered. Like they
oh, they're very gracious, you know. They're
that's a
very
word. Classy.
yeah, they're a classy bunch for sure. Um, always with they never say things that are, you know, how do you say, disturbing. They always have a way of wording it in such a way as to not create,
A disturbance vibrationally. Yeah.
yeah, a disturbing vibration. They always is always with love, you know, always. And so this is it. This is kind of go into some hardcore stuff here. And these are all questions I ask. The ratio of the hexagonal, pentagonal, multi-layered blueprint applied to a living organism will produce cellular evolution. Humans, plants, stars, and so on. This ratio is the key to life, and it's also represented in the blueprint, you know, as the flower life, you know, that simple little pattern. Um, for those who understand the secret geometry of the flower life can create universes and life forms to populate them. And here I've kind of highlighted the hexagonal, pentagonal. Here you can see the 60-degree angle, and here, if you embed one into the other as it expands out into infinity, you can see the points and the nodal points come out to 51.843.
Uh,
So you have all these geometries within the flower of life. And the hexagonal pentagonal, you know, is in our DNA in that double coiled helix. And uh, and here you can see a relationship of the pentagonal and hexagonal. This is a receptive, or you could say female, but not biological. And this is the male active end of the crystal. Whereas the receptive end is related to the golden mean ratio, as can seen in the Great Pyramid. And throughout the pentagon, you know, every angle is to every angle a golden mean ratio. And the hexagonal is related to the tetrahedron, which is 60 degrees. And so you have these hexagonal, pentagonal geometries in these two angles of the crystal. And these two angles create two frequencies of vortex spin based on these angles of inclination. Uh, Jen had said the two dynamics counter-rotate and are going opposite and meet at the vortex singularity. Because of this counter-rotating dynamics, the vortex is opened by phase conjugation of the two frequencies. I asked him, what would happen if they're both the same angles? He said they would cancel each other out. He said at the same frequency rate, the dynamics cancel. You need a difference in the speed rate to create a dynamic for the experience to tend toward perfection. And since nothing in the universe ever reaches the absolute point of perfection, the universe is alive through the dynamics of evolution. And so, this is how the Pleiadians are able to take etheric energy and convert it into physical reality using this technology. Jen Han says,
fascinating, Dan. I hope everybody is giving themselves permission to let go of stuff you already know and try to absorb what's going on here. And thank God it's on YouTube so you can replay this till you get it. Because repetition is really important when you're trying to learn something new. This is just fascinating stuff. I'm so grateful for you and so grateful for this information.
"Oh, I'm humbled to be able to share this. You know, I wouldn't believe myself if I went back several decades and
Tried to
say the
tell your
things I'm
20-year-old
saying
self.
now."
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, it's like, it's watching too many science fiction movies, whatever. Anyway, he says the 51.843 angle geometry transpons the etheric energy. The etheric energy comes in on this end, on the receptive end, and the 60-degree angle geometry imprints it into the holographic matrix of the universe. This is converts it into physical reality onto the 60-degree angle. This is a great network. This is how we implement etheric energy into physical reality. And it's true. It's how they actually manifest physical reality. And this is how the liminal geometric point of transfluxation, in other words, these two counter-rotating dual torsion fields or vortices that are coming together they meet at this liminal geometric point of transfluxation, otherwise known as the eye, and the intentions of consciousness imprint a geometric thought pattern. So how this works is your intentions, you link into it with your pineal gland, which is actually interdimensional vortex, uh, into the vortex eye of the crystal, and it modulates it and forms physical reality. I'm working on some experiments with my science team to try to measure this conversion. I showed Jen Han this earlier. This is out of the 70s, a Kirlian photograph showing it. See, it is like a double coiled torsion field coming off this pyramid. It's using a Tesla coil. He says, I showed him this, and he says, a pyramidion generates a frill vortex. Frill is the etheric energy. The vortex you depict in this visual is the etheric energy harvested by the pyramidion, or, the pyramid. The dynamic influx of this harvested energy, the mathematical ratio of the pyramidion generates a double-coiled torsion field. And so you have these two double-coiled torsion fields that are formed by the two angles of inclination of the crystal, and they meet at he says, quote, the two dynamics swirling in opposite directions create a phase conjugated tension that creates a singularity in the hologram, a convergence of infinite power. And so this is what they call the eye of the crystal, like kind of like the eye of a hurricane, it's like that still point. Um, um, Elena's sister, Zach, helped me with this animation. She's getting better all the time with graphics. Anyway, this is what happens when the two torsion fields meet. They create the singularity vortex. Now, nothing happens until you stimulate it. The vortex won't open until you stimulate it. You can stimulate it one of two ways. You can use physical pressure, with your fingers, or you can, like say, in this configuration here, I've got a crystal that has silver electrodes connected between it that I'm pulsing compression waves at 20 hertz that's keeping the vortex singularity continuously open. But when you use a crystal like this with your fingers, when you squeeze, you don't have to squeeze very hard, because the information is communicated through your fingertips. It opens momentarily every time you pulse your breath and project with your consciousness and squeeze all simultaneously. It opens momentarily the singularity vortex. Jen Han says, to activate and open the vortex eye of the crystal, it needs to be piezoelectrically stimulated. This creates a dynamic reaction between the two polarities of the charge triads in the lattice structure. It creates an exponential reaction that triggers the singularity portal. And this was evolved out of that question I asked that he had to get permission from. Because that you can see that when you put electrical pressure or physical pressure, it offsets the charge triads, the center point, and what happens is you have trillions of these, and since it's manifested on multiple densities and dimensions at the same time, it's this exponential reaction that triggers the singularity portal. Now, how you find out where this is in the crystal is you measure these angles and you draw lines. I use a piece of paper on with lines on drawing and put rulers up to it and then see where the two intersect. And that's where they intersect there's like a flat area that creates this vortex. It's like a discoidal vortex. And you can have inclusions in the crystal, in different areas, but you want to avoid this area of the eye of the crystal because this area needs to be clear. And as mentioned, I use a little piece of tape, little piece of white piece of tape so I know where to put my fingers. So where you squeeze, I don't squeeze on the tape. I move over to the next facet and that's how you open the vortex. Now, originally, when we received this information, Elena and I primitively, I was using plumbing parts and she was using a candlestick holder. And well, I put some silver coins, and we both had our function generators at 20 hertz pulsing at 1% duty cycle. And it worked. Torhan was able to check our setup, and we were able to open the singularity vortex with that. But since that, the design has evolved, like the one I showed you, and also we have an engineer in France that created a stand that you can order from his site, or he has for free a download. If you have access to a 3D printer, you can just download it and print your own, and then you put pure silver electrodes on both sides, and you connect the a function generator. Like I have one. Let's see if I can hold this up without.
You know what? Maybe when you're done, you can hold up that thing that you showed me
You can
before and this in a bigger screen because we're tiny. We're little thumbnails right now. After
Oh,
we're done,
yeah.
yeah, you're going to show us both of those things. I've made mental notes. I'm
Oh, okay.
gonna mute myself out again.
So, yeah, anyway, and there you can go on Amazon for $13. There's this pulse width modulator you can connect in, and it's a lot less expensive than a full function generator. And if you go to marcelvogel.org, I have a listing of all the parts. So people who have an experimental mind want to try it out, they can try it out. And you know, when you're working with this technology, it's good to be in gamma brain waves. It's like they say it's like a state that's like a deep love for all beings. It's like a higher state. It's more effective. It opens up vortices in the person's mind when anything becomes possible when you get up to the higher brainwave state. Our pineal gland, Jen Hand says, quote, the crystals in your pineal gland are a calcium carbonate, which is organically produced by the tissues of the human body. These microcrystals, you can see them here, these microcrystals generate an electromagnetic field at the center of which is an interdimensional vortex for consciousness. Um,
Okay,
this is
stop for just a
how,
second.
yes.
When you do the Joe Dispenza breathing and meditation and you clamp your perineum and you pull the energy up and put pressure, 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 you're physically putting pressure on those crystals. And when you do it correctly, those crystals will start vibrating and your
Uh-huh.
pineal gland will squirt DMT. I know this. I did it. It scared me. I didn't know what was going on. But this is directly
Oh, love
correlated.
Joe Dispenza. He's got such great material. Um, you know, the reptilians and the grays, they don't have this. You know, Jen Han says humans across all races of our species on any world have this vortex gland. The reptoids and the Tao, he called the grays, don't have it. That's why they can't access what we're able to. So we have this ability that, you know, the Greys tried their hybrid program to try to get some of the features that we have, and the reptilians they don't have that. So we have this. This is how our soul animates our avatar, is through this pineal gland
I feel
that
like they're
has
trying to
this.
copy the Cedars, like, but can't figure it out because their intention is so off. They'll never get it.
Yeah, well, we're all learning. I'm at kindergarten level, at this information. So what happens is the pineal gland, the vortex, interfaces with the open vortex of the crystal that's being activated. And I did this in Colorado with 1,000 people. I had everybody, I activated on stage I call it a reality transflux modulator. In other words, you modulate the transfluxation and it affects reality. And we had everybody visualize a positive reality with their breath, pulsed it into it. It was pretty incredible. It worked. We're on a positive timeline. I know. Every bit helps. Um, so, you know, ask your doctor if crystal healing with your consciousness is right for you, especially if it's being directed by people from outer space. So, got to have a medical disclaimer. I used to have people that I worked with that they just gave some herbal advice, and they came by and they handcuffed them and took them to jail. So you got to be,
Yeah, we're
the
not doing that.
pharmaceutical industry very much doesn't want any competition. But yeah, this is just for your own experimental purposes. Here's some tips on this is I only did this one other time with my friend in Australia, Chris, that I've never gone over the healing procedures before. So this will be the second time I've ever done this publicly. This is the kind of a breakdown of the healing procedure using your little crystal. And this is how you would use it according to Genhan. First, you have to be in the right state of mind, the right, be at peace within yourself and be in the right consciousness. You can't be like in a stressed out state. It doesn't work very well. To momentarily open the vortex, you use finger pressure where the eye is, like we talked about earlier, right? And your consciousness intention is actually radiating through your fingertips as well, besides giving a little physical pressure. The first thing you need to do before you do any of this is clear the crystal. Elena and I did a special class. If you go to marcelvogel.org or elenadanaan.org, you can see our crystal classes. On the second class was all about clearing the crystal, which is Genhan and Marcel Vogel both stress the importance of doing this. You have to have a clean tool. You can't have residual imprints in the crystal to work with. The crystal needs to be absolutely clear. We dispelled all the folklore that, such as you don't want to use salt, don't bury it in the ground, moonlight, dancing naked around it and chanting, or, all
Putting
these
it in
different.
direct sunlight, we're not doing that.
Yeah, all that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't.
So just you guys, I just did my little measurement thing. I used a pencil and a Sharpie and a whatever. So now I know I've got my little point here now.
Oh, good.
It's easy to do.
So, what does work though is he said the magnetic bulk eraser worked, but that's so impractical. The Radio Shack went out of business. You can find them on eBay for $30, but you have to plug them in and everything. The best thing, our engineer, is sound wave, a sound scan device, and the lattice structure of the quartz vibrates at 4096 hertz, which when the sound of 4096 hertz oscillates on the crystal, what it does is it vibrates all the lower attachments into the lattice structure, so the crystal becomes pure geometrical resonance and completely clears. Tuning forks don't really work because they change according to temperature. It has to be exactly on the frequency. So one of our science team members, the electronics engineer, he engineered a quartz transducer using a quartz time base that's accurate within 3,000ths of a hertz. And Una, with Elena, tested it, and she said it completely cleared the crystal down to base zero and even invigorated it. So Crystal Light and Sound sells these. They're somewhere around $80 or something, but you can do it for free with your cell phone. I put two links for iPhone and Android. There's an app. As long as you put the phone in airplane mode with all the harmful radiations turned off, you put the crystal near the speaker and rotate it 3 times for 6-sided, and it just takes longer, but it will completely clear the crystal. I always try to find economical solutions for everybody. So you can, well, how Marcel used to do it is, pulse his breath and then rotate it with the intention of clearing, like that. The trouble is that it's better than nothing, but if you have any parasitic thoughts, any troubles or anything going on in your mind, it gets imprinted along into the crystals. So
best if you
the
know how to
best,
meditate and get into a 0 point zone with the no thing, if you can get into the no thing space and then do it, great. But if not, then I would go probably in this time and space that we live in with the app.
yeah, because Jen Hen said, people who have reached a clear state of mind can do this. Your mind has to be clear as spring water, he says, completely clear of everything, or else you just imprint, what's
Garbage.
going on.
Yeah, garbage in,
So,
garbage out. It works with the crystals as well.
so the 40 to 96 hertz oscillates the loudest and completely clears it. So you want to clear, you have clean tools to start with. Okay, so once you got that over with, always clear the crystal before doing work. So these are Jen Han's words. Open your pineal vortex, pineal gland vortex. Visualize the wound. Say you injured your arm, for example. Visualize the wounded area and bring it in from your physical eyes into your mind's eye, into your pineal eye. Then recreate the repaired holographic version within your mind in your pineal eye because it's open. You are imprinting this to source. In other words, see the arm going from injured to being uninjured, so to speak. And then once you have this repaired vision of the arm perfectly whole again before you got injured, imprint the repaired version rather into the damaged version into your mind's eye. In other words, take this vision that you created. It's all about creating holograms in your mind because we're creative. We can create, and it affects the holographic matrix when we focus, especially when you use the crystal, it will write into it. So with the repaired version in your mind's eye, what you do is you project this repaired vision into the open eye vortex of the crystal. In other words, you have your fingers around where the vortex is. You have that clear in your mind, your prepared vision, and like pulsing your breath like a Kundalini breath of fire, a single pulse, and a squeeze and project all at the same time, simultaneously, like that, into the area. And what you do is you point the 60-degree angle, the ascending angle, into the wounded area with a winding clockwise motion until you feel it is casted into the morphogenic field. He says, breathe into the crystal at the same time, regularly repair it. In other words, do it multiple times. At the rate that you're comfortable with, to pulsing it from your mind's eye. The crystal is the bridge. So, this is the method that Jen Han has shared how to do it. Now, Una, who's their understanding of crystal technology is way, Una's actually taking Jen Han on board her craft and taking her under her wing and teaching him things, and he's so thrilled because they're 20,000 years ahead of the Pleiadians, so their knowledge of crystals and everything is highly advanced. This is what Una says. This is her healing procedure. Una says, the crystal is a bridge to source creator when it comes to healing. I'm talking about physical healing as well as emotional healing. It bridges your consciousness to the disharmonious area through source consciousness. This is what creative frequency of source does by nature. the reharmonizing and repairing of the wounded area. Practically, with a crystal in your hand as a tool, project your holographic vision of the repair to be made into the central vortex of the crystal. It will connect to source and bridge the creative frequency of source into the holographic thought you imprint it in the crystal to the target area. Let's say the example of the injured arm. When you open the singularity now she's an Altian, so if they injure their arm or something, they don't need crystals. They just reimagine it instantly. They can recreate themselves. But when they hold a crystal, the vortex opens automatically. So I'm kind of implementing some of Jenhan's techniques because we're not at the level of the Altians. And so I would say you need to open the vortex by pulsing with your fingers and doing it at the same time. Because when you open the singularity vortex, as we mentioned earlier, the singularity vortex opens through the void and connects directly to the level of source. And so what happens is your intention of doing that, source then projects out through the 60-degree angle. And this is what she says. She says, source is the healing frequency. Your consciousness gives the impulse order. It's all about intention, right? You just tell it what you want. The crystal bridges your conscious thought to the target by connecting the creative frequency of the source. Use it like water, she says, and I made a little illustration of like water pouring out of the crystal. Source creator is the medicine. In other words, source reharmonizes with resonant pattern. Your consciousness is the water that carries the medicine. In other words, your consciousness is directing this medicine to your arm by connecting to source. The crystal is the tool that pours the medicine water, onto the target. And so this is Una's method. He says, we touch the target with the top of the crystal. In other words, you can actually touch it, or you can rotate it, like Jenhan says, clockwise, over the target area. And so, yep, not going to go into that one. And so these are two Vogel-Redian crystal healing techniques utilizing the open vortex singularity that connects to source into restructuring with a resonant pattern that which has been injured. So I hope all that was understandable.
That makes sense to my mind completely and totally. It's also very linear to me, but that maybe I'm just weird. I don't know.
Excellent, excellent. Well,
The
I
things
won't.
that
There's
the
a
thing,
lot.
sorry.
There's a lot more to go into, about how frill is and how their spaceships use quartz crystals, and the frill powers these mercury iodized plasma that creates these anti-gravity propulsion systems, how their craft works on, and one of our scientists, Chris Sohn, Einstein got a lot of stuff wrong. Our dimensional bubble is filled with ether, and it happens to be the basic brick of the universe, and yeah, anyway, and the frill
If you
generators.
have the patience to do it, I'm down, but like it's okay if you want to.
This is how they power their planet. This is their older sister, Shaya Radian. She's 160 years old. So they live longer and look better than we do. They live 900, 1500 years. Um,
Mom was talking about things like this, like when she was in the throes of her Parkinson's and what they called hallucinations. Like she consistently would say, "They're waiting for me. I have to get to class." And I would ask her, "Who?" And she said, "They're waiting." I'm like, "Okay, what does your school look like?" She said, "It's a big hall." I said, "And what does your teacher look like?" And she insisted that they were very tall being, very,
yeah.
very pale.
Yeah. Una's 10 feet tall, by the way.
Okay, but this is creeping me out, not in a bad way, like the goosebumps again. So she says they're very tall. She said they're very pale, and I asked what color the hair was. She said white blonde, and she said they're
Yeah.
incredibly beautiful, but I have to get to
Yeah.
class, she would tell me. And we'd be eating, or I'd be feeding her her lunch, and like she got bossy about it, told me I got to put her back in her great green room in her bed so that she can go to class. I'm going, I'm not arguing with you. Go ahead. It's better than Mr. Alligator guy who scares the crap out of you. So you can go hang with those people, But she kept talking about going to class like for 3 years.
Cool.
So I don't know if she was talking to Elena might know. I don't know.
Yeah. Elena knows so much more than I do
Right.
and
She would
all this.
probably have something to say about everything my mom
She's had
went through.
firsthand experiences, she's been in these, she's seen inside of these here's a she saw this, she recreated this. She's a very incredible graphics artist that recreates things. They wrapped in copper and silver. And this is a gift they gave to our science team. Recreated this. This is a frill crystal generator that the torsion fields, as I mentioned earlier, interact with the crystal. The copper, if the copper is wound uh, clockwise for electromagnetic, the silver is wound counterclockwise for the etheric field, and are 90 degrees to each other around the crystal, and we pulse them at 4096 hertz, and opens up the singularity vortex that bridges to source. And when that happens, frill comes from it. And so we presented this to about 800 people on our planet back in October of 23. That's my two members of our science team. Uh, and this was in Orlando, Florida. Technology from Atlantis that hasn't been shown. This is our first prototype we made on Earth.
These are all
There's
shown
a
at
lot of,
Danny Henderson's functions. Is that where you guys are showing these things?
yeah, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference that
Okay.
Danny Henderson,
And there's another
she,
one coming up, isn't there, in Europe?
oh yeah, she's doing one in England, galacticspiritualinformers.com. Um, I'll be I'll be speaking in France and Dubai this year. It's
Wow.
the first time uh, honored to honored to do that. Speaking internationally. Um,
How
anyway,
exciting.
let's
All right.
see. These are some applications. The frill generator, of course. I'll just go briefly over this. It's healing, and you can charge water with it. You can agriculture, you can have like frill spas, that regenerate you, with the frill. The reality transflux modulator, it can alter the holographic matrix, can be used for a lot of different things. You can visualize a more healthy avatar of yourself. You can positively implant into the planetary matrix a vision of the world. And once it's written in, it writes it in forever, because it's going through the void. Crystal healing work, we just went over some techniques. This is the crystal device that our science team member created. And this is something I want to see more. I've been using my little device whenever I get a glass of water, I put it on it for and visualize it. And I can taste, of course, this is subjective. I can taste the difference in the water, but we need to have this scientifically quantified. Everything that we do, we attempt to, with the science team, quantify it. So it's not like, people just think, oh, you're pulling all this information out of where, and, there's no science behind it. So
I
we're
feel
trying to
like he's busy,
quantify
but
it.
I feel like Nassim would be interested in helping you with this one.
Oh, I would love to work with Nassim.
Oh my God, I would love to
So
talk with
if
Nassim. That
anybody's
guy.
connected with Nassim, send him a message that, connect with me, and we'll love to work together with him.
He's on Facebook.
Uh,
Private message him. He responds sometimes.
yeah, maybe. You know what? We've met a couple of times, but when he's with a crowd, he's like people surround him and I can't get to
I'm
him,
sure.
but
I know he goes to Burning
um,
Man. That's what he and Danica Patrick said. So if you're ever in the mood to go to Burning Man and are in the right place at the right time, you may just
I
walk
want to
right into
see.
Nassim. Who
I
knows?
want to see how water can be structured to be healthful, like Jenhan says. He says it can be restructured to be healthful using this frequency. And then, oh, Mr. Dan Winter, he thinks I was stealing his information. No, I wasn't.
Oh,
This is the vortex horizon curve frequencies. If you do run these frequencies, if you go past a certain time mass ratio, it saturates the crystal. And if you pass that point, the crystal will implode and becomes light and transcends matter and density. So you don't want to, you got to know what you're doing. You don't want to do this. But this is another interesting thing. But, and this is, I've been trying to get Jenhan to give me this information about how to regenerate our Terran envelopes. Um, Thor Hanradian says that this is a frill harvesting technique, part of the Dorm Darhu. It's like a Pleiadean yoga practice. This will assist in regeneration and help alleviate disease and deterioration of our Terran envelopes. It reconnects the hydrogen links between the chromosome interelements. DNA can be transmuted to a stable state of auto-regeneration once you unlock the blocks that keep the trans disconnected from the morphogenic field of the universe. So with this exercise, you can regenerate yourself, and I'll show you how to do it. And it's simple. Um, I use crystals and activated crystal, but you don't have to have a crystal. You can just do it with your consciousness. How this works is you visualize the influx of frill into your central heart vortex, and with you, you have your crystal. You can point it in a 60-degree angle always at your heart vortex, and with your pulse breath, you know, like that. Directing the frill into your heart vortex, you're feeding the upward toroidal flow that's circulating upward from the base of your spine up through the top of your head and back down again. So you have this vortex flow coming up from the base to the top of the head, and this flow is being energized by pulsing with breath and intention of the frill into your heart vortex, which is feeding the energy of this upward flow. Circulating the base of the spine up to the top of the head and back down again, continually repeating the cycling of this toroidal energy flow. As you pulse breath, the frill into your heart vortex energizes flow. So it's a simple exercise, and it entails directing with your consciousness the frill and visualizing. And so this is how the Pleiadians, this is one of their yoga practices, and that we can incorporate here on our planet, to help regenerate our Terran envelopes. All this is detailed on marcelvogel.org, a site I made in honor of Marcel and his work. And all the information is all open source and free to the world because it's a gift from their world to ours. And so we're just giving it open and freely to share on our planet. We did an experiment, Elena and I, with about 1,700 people pulsing into the planetary matrix with a crystal. And it just happened at the exact moment that everybody pulsed, Schumann resonance spiked, and I asked Jen Han, well, did
not a
we do this?
coincidence.
He said, of course it had an effect. He said, there's a ratio of population that needs to be gathered to produce a visible disturbance, and you did it that day. The brainwaves emitted by all living creatures on this planet are in interresonance with the ionosphere shell. Now, I used to work with Dr. Robert Beck, who was a pioneer in brainwave entrainment with the Schumann resonance, and people who had like special abilities where the left and right hemispheres would sync. Normally, they're like two people talking to totally different things, but they would sync together and increase in amplitude when they were doing whatever their thing was that they did, you know.
No, kind of what Bob Monroe does, but he does it externally with sound jiggling with his hemisync.
Yeah, the hemisync. I mean,
Right.
get the left and right hemisphere working together. You know, our man and woman inside of us,
Right.
when we're working in harmony together, it becomes very powerful. In fact, the Stanford Institute did an experiment where they found that the psychic ability of just a single person, when worked together with a man and a woman, it was amplified like 7 times. Salute to the Galactic Federation of Worlds and to my dear friend Jen Henredian, the Star Maker, who's currently working on Mars right now, doing terraforming operations. And a gift from our world to theirs, these 3 Vogel cut crystals. Elena, on February 8th, she boarded Thorhan's scout ship, which took her up to Una's huge mothership, and presented these 3 Vogel crystals created on our planet as gifts of appreciation for Thorhan, Una, and Jenhan, these 3 crystals. And our dear friends Becky and Russell, Crystal Light and Sound. If you go to marcelvogel.org under Vogel Crystal Resources, there's a link if you want to acquire one of these and work with this knowledge that we've been receiving. And that's it. There's more, but that should be enough.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot for people to digest, and to get
Yeah.
back to being Leanne centrific as only children actresses with neurodivergent tendencies do. I was thinking back, I think I mentioned a little earlier that I had asked Michael Sala a favor to please send Elena a piece of music that wasn't in my normal box. And he emailed me back. And I just kind of like in my ADD listening to you, I went to my apps and I opened the email and I was emailing somebody else. Emailing Steve Bassett and all kinds of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So why, when I open the app, would it open right to the email from Michael? Aloha, Leanne. Elena's response: it's not the kind of music I like to listen to, but I find it interesting as this is similar to the style of music and sonorities, sounds, playing in the lounges aboard the Excelsior.
Oh.
Right. And then Michael made a joke. He's like, you may have a future career prospect as a songwriter, singer for the GFW, LOL. So I thought that was kind of funny. He does have a good sense of humor. But I think it's kind of interesting that the artwork that I chose for that particular song was that Flower of Life thing that I held up. This, right? I copied it into Canva and used it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Did you use a computer or
No, that's all freehand. It's freehand.
was
Like,
that handmade with
yeah.
compasses? Oh my
Well,
God.
yeah, it is like a light compass line, and then I freehand color it all in, which takes days.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Days. A lot of my artwork has this stuff in it. The first thing that came out, I started playing with geometry, and the next thing I know, a face came out, and like the art kind of draws itself in my process. If I start imposing something in my head, it's literally stops. Like a lot of times I draw kind of in the dark while I'm watching TV, or so that my mind is not right. It's occupied, my body's whatever, and my hand is just whatever's happening. Like this was the first one. And that face popped
Oh
out.
yeah.
Really weird, right? A lot of blue people. Like maybe that's me. Maybe that's what, maybe that's me, the orbs that constantly fly by. Like daytime, nighttime, it doesn't matter. They're here. It's a very crowded space here. But so I find it like super, super interesting. The first experience you ever had, like when you were a little guy, like what were you doing? What could possibly have led you this way? Do you even have a conscious?
Well, I was born in the late 40s, so I grew up in the 1950s. I loved, science fiction movies like The Day There Stood Still and Forbidden Planet, two of my favorites. I also remember when being a little kid and my mother said to me, that in the future we're planning on going to the moon. And I remember this wave of disappointment. And I said, what? We haven't been to all the planets? Um, and
How's that not a bleed through though? Like Michael was saying, like a lot of things. I read Seth Speaks at a young age, and our multi-dimensional nature and the fact that everything is right now means that all the lives we've ever lived are all happening right now in that void. So it's entirely possible that you were having bleed throughs. Like my mom said something to me along the whole time I grew up. She would just look at me every once in a while and say, "You're so funny. You think I can hear your thoughts or something, or that you know that I know what you're thinking, and you get angry at me for not knowing what you're thinking." Right? But like, doesn't that smack of clearly I must have the experience somewhere of psychic communication, or I wouldn't be getting aggravated about how slow words are, about how inaccurate words can be. We had this talk right before we started, Like, so there's bleed through. We're multidimensional. We can multitask. There's so much stuff that we don't know about human beings that's, here's the trick. It's like, but we do know because it's in our DNA. So if you can just the meditation, like rattling society to the point where it can't sit still or turn inside for more than 5 seconds without freaking out. These other cultures, these what they call advanced cultures, like they've do you think have they gone through these growing pains as well? Like they didn't just arrive the way they are. This is maybe why they're trying to help us because they see.
we're maturing. We're it
We're still a very baby race.
the the prime directive, they don't allow interference with they they consider like a stage two civilization where we've kind of have an organized structure, but we haven't obtained interstellar travel and connection with other beings across the galaxy, and that's a stage three civilization. So we're we're both a stage two and a stage three civilization because behind the scenes, we've gone off planet, we've colonized different places, we have anti-gravity craft, we have advanced technology, free energy, all hidden behind the curtain in
I feel like
our
if they hadn't started lying in the first place, we'd have been like George Jetson 20 years ago.
absolutely,
If they had
absolutely.
just told the truth, if they had just allowed greed to dissipate and use the
Well,
information
it's
they had
it
like in a loving way toward the planet and the species. It's sad that it got hijacked like that. And I know we're trying and I know we're all evolving and I know a lot of the things that you and I spoke about today, that you and Elena and Michael, God bless him, like the career suicide that everybody has committed in this time and space by talking about these things.
so grateful for Dr. Michael Salla. It was the 2001 event that inspired him into getting. In fact, he had his whole class watch the 2 hours of witness testimonies, and the class weren't ready for the information. They thought people were making this stuff up, right? And so what happened was because he had this interest, he knew there was something valid and real. These people, these people weren't making these things up, and the university didn't
They
like it at
sacked him.
all.
They sacked him.
They fired him, yeah, which is I'm so grateful because then he's
Then he's
devoted the
available to
rest of
all
his
of our
life.
humanity. That's right. Now he's free to
Oh,
disseminate
he's totally
information.
free, and thank God, bless him for um, educating the public. I've been on his show a number of times, and he brings a lot of different people who have been from all sorts of different angles of this, and gives everybody a pretty good overall picture of what's been hidden. There's you know, you have to do a lot of research and due diligence in order to sort out who's the disinformation agents from who's real and valid, because there is definitely there's delusional people as well, and there is people who are on a mission to discredit other people. I spent 10 years meeting with scientists and inventors after congressional hearing was denied to bring forth the scientists that we had within these black projects. The show we had 0 point energy. And I volunteered. Dr. Greer set up a corporation, and so I traveled around the planet meeting with different scientists and inventors, vetting these technologies that are supposedly over unity. But it is a nightmare, because ever since the Invention Secrecy Act, 1951, they have anybody that has anti-gravity, free energy, anything, or even things that extend our life, you'll get suppressed. Your invention will receive a national security order that says your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to the national security. Therefore, you cannot share it with anyone. And
Well, but
so
here's
we
the
have
freaky thing. There's a guy up in Canada, excuse me, and I think Dave Generation Z. I want to say that Michael's interviewed him.
Dave
Um,
Rossi.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he
He
had the three-letter
actually
agencies come to him
he
because
was aware of the aerospace corporation that was purposely targeting Elena Danaan to try to discredit her. And he testified that, because she's a threat because she's revealing a lot of truth, and they don't particularly like that.
no, but I think they're counting on the fact that she's telling people that she's been taken into ships, that's enough for people to just turn her off immediately. Nobody wants to hear that. I mean, she's been in a spaceship.
It's a
Really?
challenge.
You know,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
little weird. But where I was going with Dave Rossi, if I remember correctly, he said something about how he had gotten downloads and then started messing around with the tech, and the tech was working. But that's when the three-letter agencies showed up because they've got tech to
Mhm.
pick up vibrations and frequencies. And if the right frequencies they find emanating from some geographical location, they'll zero in on it and come tell you, stop.
That's right.
Like,
That's
so
right.
as
That's
much as
right.
I want to tinker with this stuff, I told a guy, there's a guy named, I'm so sorry. Welcome to New York. It's been waiting for you. Do you mind? I'm trying to talk. I'm sorry. Um, but oh gosh, where was I?
What you're saying is, if you start working with certain
Yeah, oh,
technology,
as
they
much as I
they
started
have
talking to
satellites that can detect it.
there's a guy named Randy Weitenheimer, and his website is energydoctor, I think it's .com. And he's got the way he disrupts negative I mean, he'll make you roll around on the floor like you're a little kid. But think about it. You're going clockwise and you're going counterclockwise. Like, how is that not behavior of going clockwise and counterclockwise, not recentering your point of where your DNA is going in two different directions? Like, that just dawned on me after our conversation that physically rolling back and forth on the floor, like you do down a
Yeah,
hill, that would
yeah.
probably reset just like this. What I told him, and he said, if I had 5 cents for every person who came to me and said, blah, 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 I fully believe that every human being has in their own body, and whether it's the crystals on your pineal gland with enough piezoelectric pressure, like everybody has something in the, 2, 3 things in your house that were you to put it together properly and put the right intention, you could probably run your whole apartment on whatever it is, like energy. But then the 3-letter agencies would probably find that frequency and come get you.
Well, the
I've
3-letter
always wanted to mess
agencies
with
are
that.
being looked into, aren't they? We're
Yeah,
in a
they are.
process of we're in a process of cleaning house of these entities that have
Yeah, like,
basically hijacked our planet and then kept when you look at all the mechanisms of how they controlled education, how they controlled
oh, the
history, how they
confirmation system, like to make people conform and learn how not to think so that they're not free thinkers and can't possibly grasp what we're talking about today because it's been beaten out of them.
you have to you need you need the ability to think critically, to
Well,
research.
here's one. There's something called the States United Democracy Center. I think they're a 501(c)(3, $17 million they spent to make Sesame Street in a different language, or like these guys are the ones who did
Yeah,
that. Like
it's
I can dub Sesame Street right here into French from my house for free if you want. Like I don't need $17 million to do that. Like, so where's the money going?
Well, it's just one example of so much, and
One of many.
they're going through all the different agencies and cleaning out. And once they reveal that, and plus, I believe that they're going to reveal the 6,000 plus, having to do with energy, medical, anti-gravity. Elon's not going to use rockets anymore. They're going to use anti-gravity.
Just like the
Communications
thousands
are
of
going to shift.
motherships that we already have out there are doing, you mean? Like when they charge?
Yeah, well, there's at least 500 from the Intergalactic Confederation parked outside of Jupiter right now. There's a couple of large motherships that are cloaked that are in our solar system. When they start to release all this technology, we'll go from electromagnetic to quantum communication, which is not biologically
Harmful. It's not
harmful.
5G and 6G. All
Um,
these Gs are very harmful, you guys. Like it's the frequencies and they're scrambling, literally scrambling humanity
the
like an
frequencies are
egg.
such that the liquid crystals in water in our body, it's detrimental to us. I talked about Jen Han about this, and it just so happens 2.45 gigahertz happens to be a resonant frequency with water, which happens to be the Wi-Fi frequency they use on cell phones and things. But we're going to have and the biggest thing I want to see, my great grandfather was a president of Homeopathic Medical Society back in the 1900s. I was going up against Rockefeller, who was shutting down all the natural methods and taking over control of education to the doctors, and everything was geared toward profit. The whole thing was about profit.
But my
And
mom
so this
always said
corrupt,
profits before people were the profits before people party. It's not, and then and the sham
oh,
of democracy, we're in an oligarchy, which is now turned into a technocratic
oh,
weirdness.
they make natural cures illegal. Like my mother had cancer, and the doctor wanted to cut out her eye and half of her face. And I took her to the Gerson therapy across the border because it's illegal in the US. Stayed with her for a couple of months. I tried putting a computer network in the hospital for a bill. And they looked at her again. They couldn't find a trace of cancer in her. She lived in her 90s. So many people.
Well, look at the Joe
Uh,
Dispenza healings. Like, and I'll tell you right now, Joe Dispenza does these week longs, and if anybody's got an ailment or whatever, and they sign up to go into a healing circle, the testimonials, not every one of them, but I listened to 3 or 4 of them where the people are saying, and I was in this zone, and they're all meditating and they're all doing the healing, and then this being shows up. Like no joke, interdimensional beings are showing up to help with the healing. And Joe Dispenza's not out there going, yeah, the interdimensional show up at my, that's not his marketing plan. Although, when you listen to the testimonials, these beings are showing up and helping with the healing process. And then here's the other thing. There's not one abduction story. This is where it all correlates. Not one abduction story. Have you ever heard of an abduction story where anybody says, and then the being opened up its mouth and started talking to me? No, it's all psychic. Even the jibba jabba of that's all. It's not audible, I don't think.
Right. No, they use
So like,
telepathy.
what's the problem in just admitting that psychic is not crazy? It's a thing. Telepathy tapes are going to help with that, I think. Have you listened to those yet at all? You probably don't have
Oh,
time. The
oh,
telepathy tapes?
no, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, this Dr. Powell lady who put together that nonverbal autistic children are communicating clearly, effectively, psychically.
Oh yeah.
Period.
Yeah, they have children that have complete blindfolds on them. They can read books and everything like that. Yeah, it
That's
was like a
Caroline Corey's whole thing. That was the
yeah.
other part of that movie. Like, why in America do we not have in every city an alternative school? I mean, I'm not looking for you to answer because I know why. We already know why. But why
Yeah.
is there not a school like that in every city to where if a parent wants its child to exercise its psychic abilities in a normalized space, why are there not schools all over the globe that give parents that option?
Yeah, the
Like,
Rockefellers took over education, so
well, yeah.
um
Ew. I mean, I was at Le Lycée Français and it was soul crushing. And then my mom took and put me in a Rudolf Steiner school, which is where I
Oh
fell.
yeah, I saw that.
That's why I fell in love with geometry. It was during form drawing. We used to be forced to make a circle freehand. We'd go clockwise and then counterclockwise with a beeswax white crayon. And there would be a beautiful geometric work up on the blackboard when we walk in the morning. And then we'd be told, like, it was just a circle and there's no doing this. That wasn't happening. You had to draw whatever it was and then draw the mirror image, which I was in heaven. Because even as a
Yeah.
small child, if something was asymmetrical, I couldn't deal with it.
Mm.
That's part of my
Yeah. It sets
neurodivergent.
pathways in your brain. Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. Like if there was an air bubble in the bread, I wouldn't eat it. If the butter wasn't spread to every corner properly, not happening. Expecting my mom to hear me psychically and getting pissed off when she didn't. Like that these are things that as a 60-year-old, I look back and I'm like, huh, what is going on? Like this is
Mm.
that's not nothing. It's not trivial, I don't think. They're definitely markers and things that stick out for a reason, in my opinion. But that again, it's
Yeah.
subjective because it's my experience. So
Well, you're fortunate you were able to go through the Rudolf Steiner school. He was quite a genius.
from third grade to 10th grade, when I couldn't hack school at all, I just couldn't. It's the environment was I couldn't handle it. I didn't like
Mm.
being the weird one, it felt too much. Like it's the only
Well,
things I
weird
kept.
is going to be the new normal, and science fiction is going to be the new normal, and
Yeah,
so
science fiction is going to be
uh,
the new non-fictional documentary.
yeah.
Dan, you're amazing. I'm really grateful that you allowed me to spend this time with you and that you took the time to explain most of the presentation. I don't think
Oh,
we
we
got
covered it. We
all of
covered
it.
a lot of ground.
We
Hopefully,
did.
it all somehow became crystal clear.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. With any luck, it will become crystal clear to us all. And just, guys, entertain the idea that you've got look, we've got a cannabinoidal system that nobody talks about. I'm sure we have a crystalline system that nobody talks about. And here's a little weird thing that I do. You know how your belly button, like that's where you're connected to your mom? I feel like there are stem cells there still. Like, and this is my own weird idea. So I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, but like every once in a while, I'll go clockwise and counterclockwise and talk to my stem cells and tell them to fix anything that I'm not aware of, and just you do your thing and I'll do my thing, and we'll just be happy together and it'll be great. Like I just did it right now for all you guys. And that's what I do. Like, and I think it helps. I think it does something.
Of course
I
it
do. I
does,
think it does something.
there's
You
no
know?
such, the placebo and the nocebo.
The
The
nocebo.
You think, oh God, I'm doomed. The doctor gives you,
Placebo
oh,
and
you only have so
nocebo.
long to live.
Oh, there you
And the
go.
doctor, like my mother, like I said, oh, you're gonna die for sure if
No,
I take her down there. And she lived in her 90s cancer free.
like,
But
yeah, my mom
you know,
hated pharma. She
the
lived
doctors
to
have too
almost
much
99.
authority and too much
They do.
influence.
They do. And it's authoritative. Like I think science is an authoritative religion because it's a control mechanism, just like the other ones. It just doesn't come in the form of robes and burning frankincense and candles, and it's a different, it's more, if it can be more subversive, I think it is. It's like it's a little more insidious too, because it just cancels out whatever doesn't agree with it. But if you really think about science, they're always looking at things that you cannot prove until they do, and then it's the be all and end all. But until then, you're crazy. Like,
Hmm.
it's exhausting.
Well, I think Una is completely correct that we'll remember that the highest technology is consciousness.
Right. And we're fractals of consciousness. So we are the
Right,
technology. So this is
right.
linear. This is linear. We're the technology. The doctor doesn't heal you. He gives you tools to heal yourself. And if you're in right mind and you're in right relationship with source, here go the goosebumps, you heal yourself. And
That's correct. Is a bridge.
crystals amplify and make it happen with more oomph. The crystal doesn't heal you. It takes your energy, moves it through like it. I understand.
It's a
It's a
transponder.
transducer, transponder, transmusic.
Transponder. In other words, it resonates across all the spectrums, all the way to source, and so it's in synchronized frequency with source. Therefore, it acts as a bridge to source, and it's
So do our
activated with
thoughts, though.
consciousness.
Our thoughts and emotions do as well.
Oh yeah, our pineal gland is a connection to source, so we have that within us, So we don't need a crystal, but
We are the crystal, but crystals
as
help amplify. That's all.
I,
It's
I said this to Janhan, and he said, we, uh, when you're familiar with how to do this, you don't need a crystal. But he says, but why not use these incredible tools?
I was feeling like Una, like their culture is in complete symbiosis with the crystals. They're at the level where they're in symbiosis with the
She's
crystals. And
Yes,
then the
just
other
be the
thing,
crystal.
yeah, like but they know they are, so they don't have to mess around with material things to prove it to themselves. It's like we're a weird race. It's almost like we have to keep proving to ourselves that we exist in some weird way, like because we're not grasping the whole idea. Um, the other thing that was in the presentation, Jen Han used the word liminal. Like,
Liminal,
but
meaning
think about it. Subliminal, conscious thought, subliminal thought. Like we as creatures have a line. It's called the limen, right? And all your subliminal behavior. So he's using the same language. It's the same thing. The limen, it's a line above the limen, below the limen.
yeah, in other words,
There's something
liminal
to
is like
that.
the point between where the two torsion fields come. The liminal geometric point, which is the eye of the crystal, where the vortex forms, point of transfluxation. In other words, these two vortices are coming together, and as they interact with each other, there's this transfluxation of this singularity portal that's opening up that creates this singularity in the hologram that we are in. We are in a hologram.
Right, it's a projected reality. So this is technically, you guys, like there's a book and a movie called The Secret, and it's all enigmatic, and the way they talk about it makes you feel like they're special and they can do it and you can't. But this is what they're talking about, like your human body. You're a manifestation monster. You are a creator. Like you're creating your world and your reality, whether you're aware of it or not. Like right now, what you're thinking and how you feel, it's determining what is gonna appear next in your face. Like literally, you create your own reality. It's not difficult to grasp when it's put in vocabulary that is friendlier, for lack of a better word, more direct. Like, and I feel like the Iridians are very helpful when it comes to that. You know, as complicated as these things are to grasp, the way you presented everything today, I'm a 10th grade dropout. I understood all of it. So if that's
Yeah.
of any encouragement to you, you know, so Joe
Yeah,
says, if you can explain it to a kindergartner, you got something going. So there you go. I'm like a child.
it's
I
like
get it.
yeah, it
Thank
resonates
you.
within when you share things that are things resonate or they don't resonate. You know, it's like all you can do is put it out there and hopefully there's some gain some insights on you know as we utilize this gift of knowledge that I've been I'm humbled to grateful to Elena for being gracious of all these years of being able to do this back and forth relaying exchange from our friend on Mars. you it's I think it's helping bridge our consciousness into the new science that we'll be merging into that is probably, long forgotten from ancient time.
Yeah, I feel like the way I've been putting it is we're remembering a dismembered species.
Right, exactly. Yeah, re-remembering, exactly. Yeah.
So let's all walk
Well,
around and not be dismembered out in the world. Let's all be the remembering kind. How about that? That'll help exponentially if we all make a conscious choice to be the rememberers.
well,
All
that's
right,
been
Dan.
great. I really enjoyed connecting for the first time and on a podcast that you're doing, and hopefully you won't alienate
More play
your
on words.
your 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 viewers
You
and
know what? I listen, I'd rather not alienate anybody, but to be honest, if I alienate some humans, if it's a choice, I'd rather alienate the humans than the people who are bestowing the information, and it's to be hoped that enough humans get the information and apply it coherently and effectively so that they model what's coming, as opposed to words don't really work so well. Like when people see this and see people glowing and healthy, and they're gonna want to know, like in like when Harry met Sally and she does that whole fake orgasm thing, and the lady just looks over and goes, I want what she's having, right? Like,
right.
so on that Hollywood note, don't, you know, don't be my Hollywood friend. I I appreciate you, and a heartfelt thank you for spending this time and showing us all that, Dan. Thank you for being with us on
My
Ride.
pleasure.
You guys take it easy, and we'll see you next time.
Right. Bye-bye.
Woo! That was a lot. I like a lot. I hope you guys like a lot. This is a particularly long presentation, which I'm not going to cut into 2 parts. It all makes so much sense to my mind, and I hope it makes sense to your minds. And if for whatever reason you find any of this hard to grasp, then that's okay. But if you can put aside everything that we've been taught long enough to consider some of the things being discussed, please do. It's by changing our worldview and understanding new information that we will ultimately survive all of the nonsense going on as a species and hopefully be able to evolve. That said, you guys keep riding the frequency. And remember, you're the awareness. Next time.
Are you ready? Are you ready?